Coordinates: 38 degrees 53 minutes 26 seconds north, 77 degrees 0 minutes 32 seconds west, 38.89056 degrees north, 77.00889 degrees west, 38.89056 minus 77.00889. Minority: the United States Senate is the upper chamber of the United States Congress, which, along with the United States House of Representatives, the lower chamber, constitutes the legislature of the United States. The composition and powers of the Senate are established by Article 1 of the United States Constitution. The Senate is composed of senators, each of whom represents a single state in its entirety. Each state is equally represented by 2 senators who serve staggered terms of 6 years. There are currently 100 senators representing the 50 states. The Senate President and presiding officer is the Vice President of the United States by virtue of that office, who has a vote only if the senators are equally divided. In the Vice President's absence, the President pro tempore, who is traditionally the senior member of the party holding a majority of seats, presides over the Senate. As the upper chamber of Congress, the Senate has several powers of advice and consent which are unique to it. These include the approval of treaties and the confirmation of cabinet secretaries, Supreme Court justices, federal judges, flag officers, regulatory officials, ambassadors, other federal executive officials and federal uniformed officers. If no candidate receives a majority of electors for vice president, the duty falls to the Senate to elect one of the top 2 recipients of electors for that office. The Senate conducts trials of those impeached by the House. The Senate is widely considered both a more deliberative and more prestigious body than the House of Representatives due to its longer terms, smaller size, and statewide constituencies, which historically led to a more collegial and less partisan atmosphere. From 1789 to 1913, senators were appointed by legislatures of the states they represented. They are now elected by popular vote following the ratification of the 17th Amendment in 1913. In the early 20th century, the practice of majority and minority parties electing their floor leaders began. The Senate's legislative and executive business is managed and scheduled by the Senate Majority Leader. The Senate chamber is located in the north wing of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. The drafters of the Constitution created a bicameral Congress primarily as a compromise between those who felt that each state, since it was sovereign, should be equally represented, and those who felt the legislature must directly represent the people, as the House of Commons did in Great Britain. This idea of having one chamber represent people equally, while the other gives equal representation to states regardless of population, was known as the Connecticut Compromise. There was also a desire to have 2 houses that could act as an internal check on each other. One was intended to be a People's House, directly elected by the people, and with short terms obliging the representatives to remain close to their constituents. The other was intended to represent the states to such extent as they retained their sovereignty, except for the powers expressly delegated to the national government. The Constitution provides that the approval of both chambers is necessary for the passage of legislation. First convened in 1789, the Senate of the United States was formed on the example of the ancient Roman Senate. The name is derived from the Senatus, Latin for Council of Elders. James Madison made the following comment about the Senate. In England, at this day, if elections were open to all classes of people, the property of landed proprietors would be insecure. An agrarian law would soon take place. If these observations remain just, our government ought to secure the permanent interests of the country against innovation. Landholders ought to have a share in the government, to support these invaluable interests, and to balance and check the other. They ought to be so constituted as to protect the minority of the opulent against the majority. The Senate, therefore, ought to be this body. And to answer these purposes, the people ought to have permanency and stability. Article 5 of the Constitution stipulates that no constitutional amendment may be created to deprive a state of its equal suffrage in the Senate without that state's consent. The District of Columbia and all other territories are not entitled to representation or allowed to vote in either House of Congress. They have official non-voting delegates in the House of Representatives, but none in the Senate. The District of Columbia and Puerto Rico each additionally elect 2 shadow senators. But they are officials of their respective local governments and not members of the U.S. Senate. The United States has had 50 states since 1959. Thus the Senate has had 100 senators since 1959. The disparity between the most and least populous states has grown since the Connecticut Compromise. WHI